All right. Hello, hello. Welcome to our final facilitated session of the 2025 DG convening. My name is Cece Wright. I'm the Executive Director of Directors Gathering. We are recording this session. If you need any technical support during this session, please message myself or Nina in the chat. You can turn on auto captioning by clicking show captions or the CC icon in your Zoom toolbar. This session will go to 4 p.m. Eastern time, so we're going to have about an hour together. And this session is structured a little differently from our previous sessions, as this is an opportunity for us at Directors Gathering to demonstrate a service that we are developing, hoping to be able to have this available to directors and theater makers in the future. But it is a directors consulting service where directors can provide consultation to folks in the theater industry. And at first in this, we're going to focus on theater directors and their needs, but I think that there is an argument to be made that this could be very expansive, and I look forward to exploring that with you. So I say all that to say thank you for allowing us to develop this service in public, and we very much appreciate your feedback and your responses and your ideas about this type of service. So the structure of our program today is for about 20 minutes. You'll be observing a consulting session where Jerrell L. Henderson will play the role of consultant, and Carly L. Bodnar will play the role of director seeking consultation. And so I would love for you during that time to be thinking about some questions that I'll ask after that 20 minutes of a session, and where we'll be spending the bulk of our time discussing. And those are threefold. So what kinds of artistic or professional support do you think directors most need from a one-on-one consulting service like this? The second question or idea is, in your view, what would make a service like this valuable, fair, and sustainable for both the directors receiving consultations and those offering them? And the last idea I'd like for you to think about as you're watching or observing this consulting session is, how often do you think you might use a consulting service like this? And what specific challenges or goals could it help you address in your practice as a director? So please take notes. Please pay attention to the the service and the question that's being asked in the service, and think about your responses to those questions. And I will now get out of the way and pass it over to Jerrell and Carly.
Thank you so much, Cece. What a pleasure and an honor to be invited to be a part of this. Let's see how this works out. We're part of a prototype, Carly.
Yes.
We're on the cutting edge of something.
Let's try something new. I'm always here.
Yeah. Cool. So, for the sake of time, we have about 20 minutes, and as any of us who are directors or teachers know, an hour can go really, really fast. I just want to make sure that we keep it moving, but also have a chance to be a little bit human, because that is also, I think, what this is about. This process of beginning this new chapter. So, Carly, the checking question that I shared with you, I think yesterday was how'd your week wrap up?
I lost that a little bit. Can you repeat that, Jerrell?
Sure, yes, absolutely. How did your week wrap up?
How did my week wrap up?
Yeah.
Good. It was a good week. It was a good week.
Good, yeah. Same here. I didn't get everything I wanted to get accomplished, but I got some stuff accomplished, and now I know what I need to get accomplished next week. So there we go. That's good. Great. So why don't we just dive into your question? Why don't you share your question? And what I'm thinking is you'll share your question. I'm going to give a few basic responses, and then we can have a conversation with the rest of our time. Does that make sense?
That sounds great.
Great.
So the question that like I think we kind of also went back and forth on, because I was trying to like take a bigger idea that I had and kind of like crunch it down to like something a little bit uh more clarity. So I'm curious about constructing a roadmap for expanding access to larger institutions and better resource theaters. So I'm considered by some organizations mid-career. Um, and I'm just curious, like I've been doing a lot of grassroots work. You've seen my resume and my website, and I'm just like I have big ideas and I want to be able to get that opportunity to have more resources and working at larger institutions so that also my work can expand out to larger audiences, um, and also having those resources to be able to have those visions come a little bit more to life. And also
Absolutely.
pay is also nice too, you know, like being able to pay my bills.
Quick question. Are you in the Directors Union SBC?
I am an SDC associate member.
Cool.
Um, and I've also done things with drama, like I've done workshops with Drama League.
Anything else like that?
Yeah, so I've done Drama League. I did Directors Lab West in 2018 out in LA. I had applied for the New York one and was it was interesting. I applied for both in the same year. Directors Lab West took me. New York told me that I needed to go get more experience. In 2018. I have applied for the fellowship with Drama League, their stage director one. I got to the first round of interviews. And then I was told that year they wish I had applied for the other one because they felt like I had a good thing going in Philly, and and that I didn't necessarily need that. So then the next year I applied for that one, and then nothing happened from there. Um, I also got into the observership pool with SDC 2018, 2019, but that was also I could only take so much time off and apply for so many, and I got to one interview there. I've also done going down my list, like been a member of DG. I also applied for a bunch of observerships through SDC and got so many rejections that I was able to have a 20-minute consultation with them, and they were like, we feel like you've gotten into enough rooms. This is an opportunity for people to get into rooms. And I was very honest with them where I was like, I've been in rooms in Philadelphia, but I haven't been in rooms in New York. And that is two different markets with very different things. So I think that is also kind of within this roadmap as well, where it's like, I think about myself, but also others who have like come up in smaller markets. And when I say smaller markets, I don't want to put any judgment on that. I just say based on like size,
I'm gonna touch
money.
on that. Yeah, I'm gonna touch on that. Yeah.
So they were like, yeah, you're a bit more mid-career, you've been in rooms. And they were like, but when you tie it to something, you did get further on one because you tied it to something that you were doing. And so I was also like, so I need to be still doing things to tie it to that, but still have a month off to be able to go do the so yes, so those are the paths,
Cool.
like in industry and organizational wise paths that I've gone down. um
Cool.
that was
If
a
at
lot.
any No, no, you're good. This is all great. I'm taking notes as you speak, just to stay on track. Um, if at any point I'm speaking too fast, I speak fast when I get excited, or again it cuts out. Just let me know. Sometimes it's easier with the earbuds out. I have earbuds in, but sometimes it's easier with them out. So just let me know because I'm going to hit on a couple of things, and then we can have a conversation for as long as you have before it's time to take questions and comments from our lovely audience. Thank you to everybody who is joining and watching us and participating in this first ever launch of a possible consultancy from Directors Gathering. So, everything that I'm going to say is based on my own experience. I am not telling you what to do. I'm not trying to, shape you to be like me. Like I have no personal stake in your career other than wanting to see you succeed. Um, just from the outset. And if I ever, I know that your pronouns are she, they. If I ever say anything that's out of pocket, just let me know immediately, and I'll course correct. Um, so what I hear is I'm a mid-career director means that you've been working in my imagination for at least 10 years, right? You've been working for at least 10 years, probably longer. But you've been doing this for a minute. And you are perfectly fine with understanding that your career will grow as it grows, but you also have ambition to move beyond where you are, and you seem to be in this kind of holding pattern, that doesn't seem to be progressing in the way that you would think that it would be progressing or hope that it would be progressing, but you're not sure because you do have some stuff under your belt. So what does that all mean? So I see you shaking your head, so that
Oh yeah, you're like right on point. Like
okay,
it's
cool.
feeling. I've also done workshops with entertainment fund. I'm in that, like, love them. They do workshops for free, and they did like a getting unstuck in your career. Um
Yeah.
so like also like been thinking about this. So yeah, you're like right on
Okay.
point with where I'm feeling right now.
So two different ways to approach this question in terms of my experience. This is the last time that I'm going to qualify that. I'm just going to talk now. So one is the personal, the other is the commercial. The commercial we can touch on first because it actually goes back to something that you were saying earlier in terms of size and spaces. When I say smaller, I'm not saying we understand. We want to be clear about regional and commercial and where they intersect and where they're not. When I think regional, I think the Walnut, the Arden, I think Steppenwolf here in Chicago, the Guthrie, Actors Theater in Louisville. Now, those are the big spaces, but regional theater are also the smaller or and even non-equity theaters in there. Again, smaller, not a reflection of the art that's created, but like literally, when you're in the business of theater, well, you're in the business of theater, you're in the business of contracts. And as a director, the amount you get paid, the things that you're offered are all depending on the contract that you get, which is dependent on the theater that you're working with. So when it's a smaller theater, those of us who I, I hope that more of us know and understand that it's literally based on the tier of the contract that you're working with when you say it's this size theater or that size theater, but it's not a reflection of. And that's kind of industry jargon, but we want to be clear about that because this is an industry conversation. And the one thing that I always remind my teams of when I direct is that in theater, it is perfectly normal for two different people to think that they are talking about the same thing, they're using the same language, they have the same energy, and then you get a few blocks down or you get a few steps down the road, and y'all were not talking about the same thing. So that's the thing about really wanting to be clear at the outset in terms of language and vocabulary, in terms of what you mean when you say commercial at these different levels. I get it, but now we're going to make sure that our audience does, and we're educating as well as sharing information. In the commercial world, in terms of regional theater, it really is about what are you doing in your current practice? And this goes back to the personal, which I'll touch on later. What are you doing in your current practice to support that work, to seek out that work, to seek out the people who make that work? Because that's really what it comes down to. One of the things that I absolutely would love to have a conversation about, but I don't think we're going to be able to, is the N word, networking, which coming up has been a really dirty and ugly word in my coming up. But networking is something that I absolutely embrace because I don't know any other way to meet people. And if you're invited, I was an apprentice at the Walnut Street Theater. So cutting my teeth in terms of what it means to be an adult, mature art creator at a theater that I consider a bottom line theater, there will always be art at the Walnut, but that art is going to meet that bottom line. And that's where a lot of folks fall out with the walnut in terms of what often gets produced. And you like, but you can't argue with that paycheck. If this is commercial theater, if this is the pursuit of theater that will put money in your bank account as well as serve that need for expression, these are the conversations that we have to have, and networking is a part of that. And you hear that saying of like, well, I don't want to kiss someone's ass, and it's like, okay, so don't. Educate yourself in terms of how to have conversations with artists as they've made their work. If nothing else, you can say, yo, that was some dope work because you understand what it means to put work up on the stage, whether you responded to it or not. I'm getting ahead of myself. Let's stick with the commercial theater. So, what are you doing in order to make connections to these spaces? And it's an everyday thing that leans into the personal, even though it's reflective of the professional. So, that's the first thing that you really want to be aware of when you're talking about what regional theater is. Now, when you say commercial theater, my mind says Broadway, immersive piece, what is it, Meow Wow, the company.
Yeah, well,
Meow Wolf, thank you, Meow Wolf. Meow Wolf, yes. You know, things like that. Disney cruise ships, amusement parks. That is commercial theater, right? If you're interested in work,
tours.
absolutely national and international tours. If you're interested in working at that level, then you need to make sure that everything that you're doing is working at that level. First of all, it means making peace with the fact that you're making commercial theater, which a lot of us pure artists with with our fancy degrees and working in our black boxes often turn our nose up at. I will never forget when my former husband challenged me to go see Frozen the musical, and I'm like, I'm not going to go see the tour of Frozen the musical, and he's like, don't you want to work for Disney? Don't you talk about wanting to work on Broadway? This is a Disney play that was on Broadway, and you're a director. You should be there. And I'm like, well, I go see theater that's up here, and that's cool. But if you want to work at the top level, you need to be familiar with the work happening at the top level, period. I think. So it changed. It got rid of some of those prejudices that were keeping me from the pursuit of what I said I wanted. And it also opens up my mind now so that I can be open to some commercial theater that I once wasn't. I think of Andrew Lloyd Webber's Cats. It wasn't until I created the Black Theater Vinyl Archive and I listened to Cats a couple times because there's the original Broadway and there's the London. So you're listening to it a couple times and you're like, this actually isn't that bad. It's clever and it's fun and it's unified. It's a unified piece that knows what it is. It's like Annie. Oh, because if you're going to be in commercial spaces, ain't nobody going to want to hear you talk down about it. There's that moment in The Devil Wears Prada. Forgive me if I'm all over the place. There's that moment in The Devil Wears Prada where she's like, why should I take you seriously? You walk up in the fashion industry just like you don't know where you are. And while you may feel like you personally don't need to value that, this is the place that's putting food on your table and employing the rest of us, and we happen to take it seriously. So if you want to be in our house taken seriously, you got to act like you know where you are. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So in my mind, it's similar in terms of if you want to work in these spaces, then you need to make sure that when the tours are coming through Philly or coming through these other spaces, that you're going to see them. There's a podcast that I love called The Producer's Perspective, and it's Ken Davenport, who is a Broadway
Yes.
producer.
Yes, I've
And
been following him for a while.
he interviews Broadway.
Oh no, Jerrell, you froze.
No. When you're in that drama bookshop in New York City, I love being there because you never know who you're going to run into. You may not see anyone you know, or you might run into Lin Manuel Miranda. So you might be in a situation in which you meet someone. How is it to be able to like, yo, I heard your episode on this podcast. Here's my card. These are the things. Okay, so wrapping up quickly, we'll move to the personal. As you know, Carly, as many of us know who've been working in this industry for a while, being an artist isn't being the kind of artist that you want to be for yourself isn't just reflected in the jobs you get or the jobs you don't get. It's reflected in what you do every day. So again, where that person meets that professional, leaving space for other things. Lord knows nobody's life needs to revolve around theater 24 hours a day. You will lose your mind, I think. But
Yeah.
Where is that everyday practice? Where are those everyday things of, well, maybe I'll email 2 people a week. Maybe I'll listen to 2 podcasts a week. It's about the everyday. It's about talking and posting about the things that you like. If you want to work at regional theaters, what are your favorite regional theaters? And how can you, not help boost them, but help make sure that your page becomes a reflection of the things that you like. There's a great Joe Pat quote from the public, or it was attributed to him. It's not just enough to work. Other people need to know what you're working on. So your life and the way you move through the world needs to be a reflection of your interests in a way that doesn't overwhelm the rest of your life because that's the only thing you're interested in. Does that make sense?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. And it's interesting you bring that up because I feel like that's what I've been doing for a bit, where I'm like trying to find that balance. Where I was like, a friend said years ago, they were like, "You don't have any hobbies," and I was like, "Oh my gosh, I don't have any hobbies. Everything
Yeah.
like is like work or but like where theater becomes that like takes up so much time of the hobby because it's like you're working the other jobs while also doing the art. So it's
That's
like
right.
having those boundaries for myself around that where I'm like, what is also just me living a life that is not constantly tied to
Exactly.
it? And it's finding that balance too, right? Because you're like, I can't go see everything. So like, what do I want to prioritize seeing? Like where maybe it's
Yeah.
more about like also I think sometimes I put the octopus arms out where I'm like, I'll go down this path and this path and this path and let's see what hits. And it's like I think sometimes more focusing in on like what I want and then going down that path
Yeah.
um is something like where I can like kind of get that idea where it's like, right, I need to have that work life balance. If I'm going to only have so much time, where am I putting
That's
that time?
exactly. I think there are 2 primary ways of searching. One is to do the octopus arms. How far can I go? How many things can I gather? But one of the other really great ways to research is to start at one point and then just go deep. What's your favorite? Start with your favorite regional theater, no matter where it is in the country, and just research the heck out of that theater. Get to know everybody on their website. Who are the people you would email? Who are the people who do the marketing? Who are the people who do education? And where might I find my way in? I used to turn my nose up at LinkedIn. I'm on LinkedIn now because a lot of industry folk communicate through LinkedIn. You want to be about business, you got to go to where the business people are. One final thing before we switch over to take questions. I also want to remind you to look at the progress that you may not be able to see because you're in it. If you're already in conversation with Drama League, if you're already in conversation with some of these institutions, it actually means that you are further along than a lot of other people who are just starting because they're not even there. It just doesn't feel that way. It hasn't yielded the thing. But just remember, if folks in the drama league are aware of you and aware of your work, you have actually gotten your foot in the door. Now, you hopefully want to be able to remove your foot from the door because it hurts with your foot in the door, and you want to be able to walk through. But you do have some in, and you want to remember that and build on that because it's easy to discount it and go back to the drawing board. And don't reinvent the wheel if you don't have to. And remember, again, where you are today is where the version of yourself 10 years ago was hoping to get to. And you gotta remember that. You have accomplished
Yeah,
a lot already. That's why you're a mid-career director. And what does that
thank
mean?
you.
Is the process of moving forward. But I'm trying to figure out what it means to be a mid-career director. Quote from a meeting, a SDC meeting earlier this year. I've been a mid-career director for 10 years. And I'm also referred to as an early career director, depending on. So, it's common. It's something we're all trying to figure out. And these are some little tricks to keep yourself honest, to keep your mind right, so that you don't lose yourself with the pursuit of it. And it really can become about that business. If you go at it with a plan, it's more business than it is personal, I think. Yeah, is that, you know,
Yeah. Yeah, like I truly we could talk much longer because now I'm
yeah,
like,
yeah,
okay,
yeah.
this thought, now I have a question, I have a question. So like put a pin in that for another time
Yeah, yeah.
when this
Cool.
when this launches. And
Yeah.
I will sign up again and be like, Jerrell, let's talk. I've got other questions.
Please, and just know that, you've got my number, you've got my email. You can always reach out to me. You can always text me. I'm great with that. But I want to see if anyone listening has any questions that they want to share. Or no, Cece can do that.
Yeah, thank you so much for that. And Nina, we can unpin Jerrell and Carly so we can all be in space together. And folks who want to come on camera, feel free to do that so we can engage in some dialogue around this consulting service that we are developing at Directors Gathering. It is certainly, we are in the early stages of it, and I really want to give our community space to respond to what you need and what you're interested in. So there's nothing really wrong that you could offer in this space. Obviously, in alignment with our shared agreements that about how we're in space with each other, like practicing curiosity, asking good questions for clarity, and then things that you can offer to this space. So, uh, Nina, are you okay with taking them down from Spotlight? Oh. Okay. While Nina works on that, I'm going to share again the questions I asked you to think through. Um, and then I will start off so that folks don't feel the pressure to speak first in this space. I'll start off with Jerrell and Carly, your initial responses inside the space, and then if folks want to start jumping in with their responses to either the questions or something that Jerrell and Carly say. So Jerrell, Carly, who wants to go first?
You can go first.
Well, I'll even say, like, as Jerrell and I were emailing back and forth, I had two different questions that I offered where I was like, look at my marketing material, like my website, everything else. And then I was like, also career roadmap. And I did write back where I was like, Jerrell, do you charge? Do you have availability? Like, I'd actually love to also have my website looked at. So I think there's like also something interesting in this consultation as well, where it's like, what are we concentrating on and where does everything start becoming interconnected? Because I also look at my website and I go, that's not a commercial director's website, but that's also not who I am. So how do I square that? Where I'm like, I don't like all the gray. I want color on my website. So like, how do I make so like it's also interesting because as we were talking, I'm also thinking about how, as you were saying, like, what are you putting out on the socials? What are you using? What are you not using? And like, where does that, I think so much of this has become also for me the commercial theater versus like very process based theater. Like commercial also feels like product, and we used to have process and we don't as much anymore. And then I care about process, and so it's like, where do my morals, ethics, and values also fit in all of these spaces to show up as my authentic self that I don't feel like I'm also kind of masking in these spaces? So I think there's something interesting in the consultation of like, how do all of these different things and how do we, it makes me think of also the like, where we talked earlier in one of the sessions about power and where can we kind of be um pushing back or changing things within the power and control that we have. So I think a lot about that as well when I'm thinking about my career. So they do feel like deeper questions that have lots of boxes to them. So I'd be interested also maybe in something that is like, where do we categorize things, but where do we, for the consultations, but where do we also maybe even like, is it a series or is it a like, because I think there's also something about coming back to spaces and being like, look at what I've done, almost like in school where it's like, look, I did my homework and like, what do we think? How am I doing? Give me some feedback on the changes.
Yeah, no, absolutely, and thank you for sharing that and reflecting that back. It's one, I appreciate the time constraint because it forces me to be clear. I like to talk in stories, and if you only got 20 minutes, you ain't got no time for no August Wilson length story. You gotta, be clear and again challenging, me as the person, offering consultation, really challenging me to be like, does the person who you're speaking to know what you're gonna have any idea of what you're gonna talk about? And instead of being like, oh, I'll just show up and we'll figure it out, of being like, no, I'm going to create a roadmap, and it's a basic roadmap. It's got enough in there that we can do it. Even if we do half of it, we'll still cover most of what we wanted to cover. But at least there's a level there. So I really did appreciate that. And then just the openness of, I think I wrote it in one of the emails, just being able to have adult conversations about these things because there isn't a lot of space in there. And when you're trying to figure out how to move beyond an aspect of your career that has been frustrating you, you really need to make sure that you're in a space where the person or the people that you're speaking to trust that you're not just dumping on the industry, or you're not just dumping on theater, or you're not just a downer. It's where ambition and hope and reality kind of collide, and you're getting this feeling, but you're not sure what it is, and you're trying to figure out how to move through it. You're not trying to stay stuck in that feeling. In fact, that's why you're being open about it, because you're not trying to just be stuck in there. But it doesn't always come off that way. Sometimes folks don't have the space for it, you know what I mean? And so this does really create an opportunity for us to come together and begin to have the conversations. Again, directors gathering, offering spaces for directors to talk to directors. It is a lonely industry, it is a lonely job. So this is a place where we can come together and not talk about how to make something, but to talk about how we live and keep our sanity in an industry that is sometimes, there is nothing like when the industry opens itself up to you and you're receiving the emails and receiving the invitations and being nominated and invited to the theater proms. And then there's a space where don't nobody know your name, don't nobody know your email, ain't nobody inviting you to no theater proms. Um, so how do you navigate that? And really, I was watching Wynton Marsalis interview the other day because I was feeling down, and when I listened to him speak about art and craft, I feel better. And he was talking about the the beauty of artistry, and the goal of artistry really is to know that you are always moving at your best. And in the words of the gospel lyric, that is something that the world can't give you, and the world can't take it away. And that's actually how you remain sustained in your sense of who you are, because you're true to who you are, learning where you need to learn, growing where you need to grow, but really living inside of that. No, this is my path. And to something you said earlier, Carly, in terms of you really do need to make peace with what you want and what your values are. If you want commercial theater, you play in the commercial theater game. And the commercial theater game can be generous, and it can also be cutthroat. And there's a lot of specific language you need to know. There's relationships you need to have. That's what it takes to make it in the commercial theater world. But you also have that in the non-commercial theater world. It just manifests itself differently. But if you want that commercial theater, then it's that great thing of Julie Taymor. There's an interview that she gave, I want to say in the '90s, at some point, where she was like, "I just don't want to be the person directing Batman the musical." She said that in an interview, and then you're like, but then somebody was like, "What about Spider-Man?" And you were like, hmm, you know, might be able to do something with that. You know what I mean? So you really, really need to work on always being honest with yourself. And if you don't want it, that's okay too. One of the gifts of the grad school program that I went to is that every professor could do anything, but they had their specialty that they love to do. And so learning from someone whose specialty was site-specific theater, non-traditional theater, using theatrical traits to affect politics, staging protests, things like that, and him saying out loud, like, yeah, I don't like working inside of theaters. What? Yeah, it bores me. A script that has a copyright from 1969. Excuse me. That's not as interesting to me as creating something that showcases how capitalism works in tangent with all these other things now, and it takes place on the street corner, or it takes place in the public park, or it takes place in City Hall. Knowing and being honest about who you are as an artist, even as you discover who you are, also helps keep you honest. So there are some opportunities I know, there 2 years ago, last year, there was an opportunity that did not work out. And I was so bummed. And there was this part of my mind like, Jerrell, you don't even like to do stuff like that. You don't even like doing stuff like that. Why are you bummed? Because I didn't get the opportunity to apply for it. Okay, so that means you're disappointed. But you can't be that disappointed because you're not trying to pursue stuff like that. You just thought it would be a cool opportunity. That's how you keep it moving. If that's helpful.
Yeah, thank you both for your responses to your experience. Are there any folks who are in the room who would like to respond to the session you watched, observed specifically, or anything that Carly or Jerrell said, or any of these three questions? And I'll read them out loud again for everybody to hear. So the first question I offered was, what kinds of artistic or professional support do you think directors most need from a one-on-one consulting service like this that you just observed? Second question is around, in your view, what would make a service like this valuable, fair, and sustainable for both the directors receiving consultations and those offering them? And then the third area is, how often do you think you might use a consulting service like this? And what specific challenges or goals could it help you address in your practice as a director? I also want to offer a little bit of context for this service, or this idea of offering this service. From my perspective is, I see it available, or I have seen it available to other theater practitioners for their work. And because I work with, and in many ways feel proud to work for theater directors. I'm also a theater maker, but very proud to work with, and for theater directors, I saw there was potentially an opportunity for this to be useful to folks. And so I've seen it in the playwriting space, where playwrights can have parts of their script or their entire scripts read, and get some dramaturgical feedback or some other sorts of like responses to the piece that they are developing and working on. And so I'm asking, what would that look like for directors? Another experience that I have had personally is through a program that I'm not sure if you're familiar with, but if you're any kind of entrepreneur, and I think that probably most directors, I think that freelance directors should probably think of themselves as entrepreneurs, because they are often the ones making the work, or finding the ways to make the work, finding the paths, what have you. So I think of directors as entrepreneurs. Uh, and I have, as an entrepreneur myself, claiming that title, I have participated in a program called, or with an agency, as an offshoot of the Small Business Administration. So each state in the United States has small business development centers around the state. This is a resource for small businesses, and through our tax dollars at the federal level being distributed or allocated to different states, they are, let me just read something a little more official. They are centers partnered with the Small Business Administration that offer professional, high quality, and individualized advising for existing small businesses and pre-venture entrepreneurs. So they offer advising, counseling, training to help with business planning, finances, marketing, and more. I've been a recipient of an artistic based grant in Pennsylvania, and tied to that was a requirement to sit with actually one of the Small Business Development Center consultants prior to being able to apply for the grant. The idea was that you talk about a business plan that you have for yourself as an artist, however that looks. And an artist was a wide spectrum of what they allowed for this particular state grant. But I didn't know this service was available, and also that it was completely free. Like I can go to them, schedule a meeting, 30 minutes or online and in person, 30 minutes or an hour, I think, are what the sessions are like. But it was so helpful because in that I also got some coaching because I needed that. I needed someone to help me look at what I'm trying to do and figure out what my path is toward achieving that, which is, you know, not necessarily the same as other folks' paths. And one of the challenges I have is, to be honest, networking for, it with the intention of doing something for myself and to advance my individual self. And so and I just happened to get matched with an advisor, a consultant who identifies like me as an introvert, where we do not draw our energy from social situations. But we're good everywhere else, and so we have to have a plan when we go into networking spaces, like even down to, and she was a woman after my own heart, because she was like, I put my business cards in one pocket and the ones I receive, I put in another pocket. And I was like, that's what I need. So I know, like, mechanically, because then I can be personable if I have all the mechanics of what I need to do, exchanging information in whatever space I'm in. Passing out business cards is not necessarily a practice in artistic spaces, but um, it was very helpful for me depending on the environment I was going to go in, to help advance myself and my business venture. So I say all that just to give some context of like what we're trying to build here. um, I don't think we're trying to like reinvent anything. Like these things exist in other spaces, but I wanted to find another way to support directors specifically. When you maybe you can't, for whatever reason, reach out to a director to ask these sorts of questions, or um, maybe for there could be many reasons why you would want someone that maybe you don't know yet, or that you want to get to know, to help consult on some question that you have. And I'm hoping that we can pull together directors to provide this service who have varying backgrounds, so that as we connect you with folks, maybe you can get different perspectives and ideas on common themes. But I also, Carly, love the idea of coming back to folks and to continue the conversation. I think that's really important to that continuity. So I'll stop talking because I see Jiwon. Did you want to offer something?
Yeah, I just wanted to say thank you for Jerrell and Carly to have this. It was really inspiring to hear from me. I would identify myself as an early career director. I mostly worked in higher educational theater institutions because, like right after grad school, I just had to figure out a way to stay in the United States as a international artist. So I only could apply for higher ed jobs. So that's how I got into like directing and directing in higher ed education. But now that I am planning to permanently immigrate to the United States, I am really trying to get my face into professional, like outside of educational theater. And I'd say like to be honest, like I think I've been like really lazy with like, doing my websites and like marketing myself. And also as an introvert, I was very bad at, following up with people and so yeah, like it was really useful. And I felt honestly like a little lost in terms of like, oh, how do I let people see that I exist and in this word, like in Michigan. I most of my professional contact was in Chicago, where I went to grad school, where I could like get into the door through professors, like and all that stuff. But like now I moved to Michigan, where I have nobody as my mentor, and it was like really difficult for I was just feeling really lost in terms of like how do I even like get to talk to the artistic director in this regional theater area. And the only thing that I could like think of was like to sending emails, and like, but I now I see that like, oh, I actually really need to like show up to their performances and like just start talking to people. So yeah, like it was really inspiring, and I am like now like really trying to like apply for different directing fellowships in the nation, to just, to just say that I exist to the word, and just keep doing what I've been doing. But yeah, it was really inspiring to hear, and also like it was good to see Jerrell again. I think we met like once in Chicago, like in Stefano Theater, I think, after a show or something. Like I think, oh yeah, like I remember meeting
Yes,
you
that is
one day at
exactly where we
Buddy.
met. We met once in Steppenwolf's lobby. Yep, I
Yes,
remember.
okay, great, awesome. So yeah, it's good to just see you again, via virtually, and just hear your perspective on networking and all that stuff. So yeah, like just yeah, thank you so much.
Yeah, no, and thank you for sharing that. Again, it's really good to see we have a relationship that goes beyond because we went to the same grad school program, not at the same time. But that's where we have that connection. But no, just kind of like you know, getting people to one know who you are and two care. Um, and some of that, if we had time, I would have gone more into this. Like, there are standard ways of like, if you can get in with a theater company and you become their resident artist, that's a way. If you can find a playwright, they say this in Chicago a lot, find a playwright and then develop a relationship. But for those of us where neither of those paths went our way so far, maybe tomorrow I'll get an email from somebody and it'll become a lifelong relationship, but it hasn't happened yet. Sometimes it's also about not showing up and making sure that you're seen and known, and also what are you generating on your own? What work are you creating to remain in conversation with the kind of work that you want to create? Really, really quickly, I was talking to folks maybe earlier this year or last year, up and coming directors, and it's like sometimes it's not the project that comes to you from someone else. Sometimes it's the project that you've been working on, and it just takes a really long time because you have no resources, and you're building the plane as you're trying to fly the plane. Um, and sometimes it's the audience that you can get to show up. It's the press that you can get to show up, and you bring out your ladder and you climb up the ladder and you have your little project and you drop the project yourself and you climb the ladder and go, okay, everybody, yay, Jerrell, yay. And that's the work that you're able to accomplish. It is self-driven. It is self-produced. And while the final version of that might not be what you wanted, it becomes a potential stepping stone to the next thing, right? And that's why with musicals, study the history of commercial musicals, where people are like, no, 10 years is a basic. If it takes less than 10 years to make a musical go to Broadway, that is exceptionally rare. And you just have to know and have that understanding of time in your own project. So again, you're not waiting for someone to create a project for you, but you're also open to play. All right, that hopefully that makes sense.
Hey everyone, I'm Kavan. Thank you all for sharing your experience and watching you do a really vulnerable thing, sort of talking about where you are in your work and whatnot. Uh, to speak on that first question, this idea of I've been really privileged and blessed that I've gotten like a lot of like fellowship support and like institutional support, but like that support actually hasn't come with a lot of actual opportunities to work. Um, and that's where I'm realizing I need to be now. And seeing the limits of institutions and foundations and all those kinds of organizations, and realizing that, oh, I actually do have to make it on my own. So I think, as far as that first question, like the kind of support, like I trust myself as a director. I know I can be in a room with actors and people and make stuff work. But it's the actual producing aspect that is like actually like, oh, this is a whole other skill set. Um, that I find I'm sure I could probably do and figure it out, but like it does feel like wading into uh, a big body of water when you're trying to like hold the play in your hand and hold this artistic experience in your hand. So I think that's sort of where I would um, the kind of support I could see being really useful and helpful. Um, yeah, because I've also realized a lot of the sort of institutional support is often about assisting other people, which is a really useful thing. I've learned a lot from doing that. Um, but I also feel like I'm at that stage where when I need to learn, I can only really learn by actually doing it, by being in the in the chair. Um, so so yeah, I think right now that sort of producerial support and mentorship and consultation would be where I find the sort of business skills and the sort of like just like where can I rehearse in like I'm in Philly. I'm relatively new to Philly. I don't know where to rehearse in this city. I don't know where actors hang out in the city, things like that. Um, so like those kinds of conversations are local producerial in a way, but also sort of magna producerial that can apply to any place.
I'm also in Philly, so if you ever want to chat, please let's do that. Like, let's connect.
I'd love that.
Yes, because I've been here for 20 years, but I also feel like so much has changed, and I'm still figuring out where everybody's hanging out, and I'm still figuring out the spaces that are available now because so much has changed because of shutdowns and industry and world. So it's an interesting place. And kind of going off what you were saying, I'm curious, Cece, if there's a way to connect directors with independent producers. I don't feel like there's a lot in Philly, but I keep hearing like there's like New York, LA has people who are just like, I want to produce things that aren't like an institution or they might be a production company that I'm curious if there's a way to help find those two groups and kind of put them together, because I find that the hardest thing too is like self-producing while trying to direct because you're wearing multiple hats and the art suffers, which is why I only ran a company for 5 years and then I was like, now I'm burnt out from running my own theater company.
I will say just that, and Jerrell, you can go. Short answer is yes. It is on my to-do list of making those connections, and already have been talking to someone about a space that they're in where they have access to those who are learning, like going to school to be producers and that sort of thing, and connecting directors, but also if you were around last weekend, we had a Meet the Producers session, and I am developing a targeted list of independent producers and producers in institutions as well, so that we can have more programming with theater directors, with directors gathering specifically. So the short answer is yes, working on it. So if anybody, you know, wants to connect further on that, just reach out to me and I'd be happy to talk further.
Quickly, Carly, is the Ethical Society and Rittenhouse still a thing? Are they still around?
Ethical Society is still around. We've still Plays and Players also has an artistic membership now, which nobody knows about.
Okay.
And they have to number it, but it's $100 a year and you get discounted rehearsal space and one night in their black box 65-seat theater.
Okay.
And you can do whatever you want in there as long as it's in and out in one day. So I did like 2 readings there one night. So those are 2 spaces I know of. I know Vox, I know, yeah, there's some. Like I can try and think through what I still got, because we lost a lot over the years.
Yeah.
And new ones have like popped up and then they go away and then they pop up.
Yeah, that's the thing about Philly. Like I spent the first 30 years of my life in Philadelphia, living there and growing up. But that's now well over 10 years ago. since I've lived there. So, like, I know that the Ethical Society is a place that I directed at the very beginning of my directing career. I think I had $30 in my bank account, and I needed to buy $10 worth of Christmas prep decorations so that we could do this Christmas play that was going to take place in the basement of the Ethical Society. I still remember that. But going back to something else that was spoken about in terms of when I was first coming out of undergrad in the early 2000s, coming out of the late 90s, the thing that you still heard in Philly was that you had to start your own theater company. And at that time, there were, a lot of up and coming theater companies, most of whom aren't around anymore. Um, but there was that entity, and I remember trying to do that, and like I didn't know how to start a business. I had no equity. I had no people in my back pocket who could write a check for, or who knew people who could. I was having parties to come bring folks over. One person might show up. And so the whole idea of you got to start your own theater company has never seemed feasible to me. Because in my mind, that's like saying, oh, you just, oh, you want to be in Hollywood? You just got to get to LA and make it to the park. And it's like, the lot. And it's like, no, there's actually a lot more that goes into it. And if you don't know about that and you have limited institutional knowledge, right? This is the beginning of my relationship with the walnut, not the end. So I haven't had years of watching how they do it at that level and then trying to figure out how I can do it at my level. So all that to say, it's in my experience, it really is driven by you understanding the best you can about who you are and what you want and going after that in the most direct and clear way possible, knowing that oftentimes the universe will send you to L before it lets you double back to C. No, this is the direction that I'm going in. Why are you pulling me in this direction? Because you can't get there unless you go through there, and I don't know why. But that's the way it's worked out for me. You know what I mean? But yeah, I can't start your own theater company. Sure.
I got lucky because I started it and then Plays and Players did co-pros with us. So they gave us our space. Like they gave us in-kind rehearsal space and performance space, which is like the only way I was able to do it. And then I had to end because my donors were my family and friends and they didn't have any more money to give me.
But so the idea of like have something in your back pocket. But thank you for sharing that. Is it Kavan? Sorry.
Yep, Kavan.
Kavan, thank you. No, but thank you for sharing that, and especially since like you have some institutional support, and so understanding that I again similar like a couple years ago being invited to be an assistant director, and I'm like, this will be like my fifth or sixth time being someone else's assistant director. Am I a professional assistant? So now it's like, no, I'll take associate director. Do you have associate? Oh, we're looking for assistant. Then this isn't for me. Thank you so much for thinking of me. And the ability of getting to that point in our careers where you learn how to say no. One of my professors used to say, your career will be defined by the projects you say no to. So some of it is learning when it's time to be like, nah, and knowing that does put you in uncharted waters. But that uncharted waters you're now prepared for because you had to swim through those other waters that you now know in order to get there, right? Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you all so very much. Thank you, Jerrell. Thank you, Carly, for allowing us into that space with you. I so appreciate that, your willingness to play along and be open for this. Thank you to everybody for allowing us to develop this in public, as I said. It's really important to us that the way that we move and operate is developed in community. And this is the best way I could think of doing it. So I appreciate that. And I want to share before we go, Nina, do you have the link for the survey handy? But I want to put a link in the chat to a survey that we're going to keep going. Thank you so much. This is a space where you can respond to those same questions. If you think on it later on tonight or even a week from now, put those in there, and I'll get that, and it'll help us to continue to develop this service. Like I said, we're recording this session, so when we share all the convening recordings later, this will be available, and we'll remind folks that they can come back to it and they can respond to the survey, and they can reach out to me directly about this as we continue to develop it. This is the end of the 2025 DG convening, sort of. We have a session in a couple hours, which is really just an open space if you all want to come in and connect. It's our reflection room. So if you'd like to do that, happy to have you. But if this is your last session with us, I want to say thank you to everyone for participating and for coming into space with us this year, and so much more to come. All right. Take care,
Thank you,
everyone.
CC. You're amazing, CC.
Thank you so
Thank
much. All right. Take
you.
care, everybody. Bye.
Thank you,
Fun.
Cece. Thank you, Jerrell. Thank you, everybody.
Okay, see y'all.
Bye-bye.